Oh, let me go ahead and end this. Hey, y'all, how are you doing? I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I'm back for another patron/members only video. I am a few minutes late because that's just how it is, you know? You know me. But I am really glad to be able to finally come here and have this conversation about glitch feminism. All right, so last year, this year, I don't know, time runs together. I was invited by Barner to have this conversation with an artist, a trans artist named Juliana Huxtable. And Juliana was so interesting and thoughtful, and like she said things that literally blew my mind. And while she was talking, she talked about this book called Glitch Feminism, and she's actually featured in the book. And I was so fascinated. I'm fascinated by art world people, you know? Like, I'm not cool enough to be like an art world person. But when I was younger, I really, for a minute, thought that I wanted to be an art dealer. Because I'm really interested in art and art history and all of that kind of things, right? They're just like a different breed of people. And so I bought this book, Glitch Feminism, and read up on Legacy Russell, the author, and I was like, oh, okay, like this is fascinating. And I opened it initially, and I was like, oh my god, all right. But the first chapter like really got to me, but I was also like it was difficult to decipher. And then I kept hearing people reference this book, like, you know, theorists that I enjoy, people, art world, Black art world women that I follow on Twitter. They kept mentioning this book, and I'm like, okay. So then I finally decided to read it, and I read it, and I was like, what the fuck? You know, like, if you've read this book, you know it is not easy to get through, and there's some really interesting ideas there, but also some difficult ideas there. So I was like, oh my god, like, who am I going to talk about this with? And you guys. So I have now read this book 2.5 times. The first time, again, I didn't get all the way through it, but I've reread it over the past couple of weeks 2 times, and it's taken me a long time. It's taken me a long time. And it doesn't usually, that's not really my thing. I just had and I love theory. I had a really hard time, I'm going to be honest, getting through this book. And, you know, it's to the point where I've watched a couple of Legacy Russell's talks. Y'all don't tell her this, you know. This isn't supposed to be shade, but maybe it is shade. It's to the point where, and this happens a lot with kind of theory and like academic texts, I can't tell if Legacy Russell is a genius and I need to catch up, or if we are giving too much space to people who make work that is esoteric and borderline indecipherable. Either way, I definitely came away from Glitch Feminism with some thoughts. And so what I thought I would do is kind of the same thing that I did with Drug Use for Grownups, which is share the notes that I took and the questions that I asked and my own thoughts that came up while I was reading the book. And then at the end, we'll just have an open kind of conversation about what it is and what it means. So let me go ahead and share my screen, my Chrome tab. Okay. Glitch Feminism. Is it time to give up? Okay. So we start with the introduction. My first thought was, as somebody who has had a full-blown eating disorder and continues to battle body dysmorphia, there's an appeal to me to the idea that we can use the internet to transcend the body. Legacy talks a lot. She still identifies as a woman, a queer woman. And she talks about a lot about how we can use the internet to obscure or abstract or move beyond the corporeal, the body. Okay, where did you learn how to perform gender? Why did you do it? All right, my first quote is, Online, I sought to become a fugitive from the mainstream, unwilling to accept its limited definition of bodies like my own. What the world's AFK offered was not enough. I wanted, demanded more. So there's a couple of definitions we have to have right off the bat. So fugitive, the word fugitive comes up a lot in this. And this is how you know, when you hear the word fugitive, you know that people have been influenced by Sadia Hartman, Fred Moten, Frank Wilderson. There's a very specific kind of Black studies terminology. It's basically like, how are we going to escape the world that we've been given, right? So this world is full of oppressions and constraints. And instead of being subject to them, instead of being subjugated within them, you're going to be fugitive. You're going to escape them or, transgress the boundaries. And then AFK means away from keyboard. And she uses AFK instead of IRL because IRL in real life presupposes that online life is not real life. AFK is just away from keyboard. Still real. Okay. So the first question is, why do we want to do away with binary gender? And the answer is because it's constraining and lethal. She writes, the construct of gender binary is and has always been precarious, aggressively contingent. It is an immaterial invention that in its toxic virality has infected our social and cultural narratives. To exist within a binary system, one must assume that ourselves are unchangeable, that how we are read in the world must be chosen for us rather than for us to define, right? I wrote, let me make sure. Let me make myself bigger here. Okay. So I wrote, I really related to the introduction a lot into Legacy's reflection about how freeing it was for her to be able to log onto the internet. I am an OG internet nerd. And I've never felt gender dysphoria per se. I've never felt like, I wasn't a girl or a woman, but I felt generalized dysphoria about my life and existing in this body as a, brown skin, thick from a really early age, features and hair and all of that. And even just feeling like, why am I here? Like, why do I live in the suburbs of Texas or Oklahoma, right? I've definitely felt that. And the internet was always an outlet. That's why I was so drawn to it from such a young age. And, something I think about is it's a real privilege. My mother was very tech savvy. So it's a real privilege to have, from the time that I was 4 or 5, have had internet access. I wonder how would I have coped? How would I have managed if I did not have the internet as an outlet? I know for sure that I would not be the feminist that I am if I didn't have the internet. I don't know what kind of person I would be, because the internet really helped me be able to see my way out of, Black girl, Oklahoma, in a family that I just was like, oh, why am I in this family? It helped me to see a way out and map a way out. And what Legacy is saying here, that it helped her as a young queer girl moving into woman, think of how she could escape, particularly the gender binary, even though her pronouns are still she, her, right? And she also talks about how it is important for us to be able to use the internet as a site for exploration around sexuality and femininity. And I definitely, when I was a kid, I really related to this because I definitely did. And it was immediately making me think of, my first screen name, which I don't even know if I really want to say. But I used the internet literally to shapeshift. I pretended on message boards, message boards, forums, the little chat bot sites. I pretended to be older. I used to have cyber sex with strangers as a little kid. And you know what? I read Issa Rae's book, And in Issa Rae's book, she talks about this too. I probably never would have admitted to like being like a literal child, maybe 9 or 10 years old, and pretending to have cyber sex with like internet strangers if Issa Rae had not put that in her book. But I definitely did that. I even, when I was younger, this is so fucking fucked up. This is why you gotta monitor your kids. Okay. But this is what I was doing. I remember one time I was maybe 11, maybe 11. I gave a strange person my phone number. And this was like a Saturday night. And I gave him my phone number and I talked to him on the house phone while my mom was sleeping. It was the night before church, I remember. And, you know, he was like, we should meet up at McDonald's. And I was like, yeah, we should. Now, I had no intention of ever meeting at that McDonald's. Now, you know, that's how people get, you know, like murdered. But it's just so interesting, you know. Those were my first experiences with feeling desirable in a time where like I was just figuring out like what does it mean to be sexy, but also, you know, exploring desirability even in using, I cannot for the life of me remember. There was, God, if I know one of y'all remembers, but there was like an app or like a software where you logged on and it was like a virtual world and you would use an avatar, like choose an avatar and go from room to room to room. And so when we're talking about, you know, exploring desirability and sexuality as a child, I was at that time like using white avatars, and like this is so like weird to say, but I really was doing this. And we don't really talk about this, but I really was doing that. And then like having cyber sex with people, and you know, it's like the desirability stuff is just so interesting. And I look back like, why was I choosing the avatars that I was choosing? Why was I engaging in the behavior that I was choosing? One, because there is no safe space for children, literal children, preteens, to talk about the burgeoning like sexual desire, right? Like that stuff is really taboo. We only know how to talk about. Now I'm really getting off here. Sorry, but these are the feelings that came up while I was reading this book. Because she's talking in the book about having a safe space to explore desires and sexuality, right? But something that came up for me was we only know how to talk about children and sexuality via the lens of exploitation. And I understand that, right? We don't want children to be exploited. We don't want children to be preyed upon. But I was masturbating when I was 10. You know, when I was 10, my sister was 18. So I was seeing things, feeling things. But there was the only outlet for me to do that and figure was the internet. Anyways, I was definitely escaping, but also playing, you know, and the internet at that time, you know, this is 20 something years ago. It was the only space that I had to explore that part of me that just could not exist in the real world. It's not that they were, you know, online Kim and AFK Kim. It's those Kims were the same. They just didn't have any space to be combined. You know, and I wrote, where would internet Kim have gone? You know? But anyways, that's a conversation for another day. I am Movie Star Planet. I am VU. I don't know. Maybe it was that. I don't know. I don't remember. Okay, let's get back to it. All right. Next. To be at the intersection of female identifying, queer, and Black is to find oneself at an integral apex. Each of these components is a key technology in and of itself. Alone and together, female, queer, Black, as a survival strategy, demand the creation of their individual machinery that innovates, builds, resists. With physical movement often restricted, female-identifying people, queer people, Black people invent ways to create space through rupture. Here in that disruption with our collective congregation at that trippy and tripwired crossroad of gender, race, and sexuality, one finds the power of the glitch. Legacy argues what we know to be true. Marginalized people have to create space to live. It's not given. Her intervention is the terrain we should be utilizing. She believes deeply that it is the digital. Okay. I wrote, the big idea is gender is a system used to shape society and culture. She writes, if we step back further, considering the larger and more complicated systems that have been used to shape the machine of society and culture, gender is immediately identifiable as a core cog within this wheel. The concept of a body houses within it social, political, and cultural discourses, which change based on where the body is situated and how it is read. When we gender a body, we are making assumptions about the body's function, its socio-political condition, its fixity. Okay. What are my... Okay, italics is my thoughts. And I wrote, as soon as you thrust gender onto a body, it's like you're putting it in amber. It's fixed. And most of us don't escape. And not all of us want to escape, but it's certainly useful to question that which is assumed to be natural. That's the thing, right? We get all of this messaging from, the time that we're born, that all of these assumptions that are thrust upon us are just like the way it is because it's natural. Of course, girls like pink, as I, wear a pink, little corset top. Of course, girls like to have their hair done. Of course, boys like trucks. Of course, boys like blue. Right? All of these things are happening and shaping us and pushing us and pulling us all the time. All right, legacy. What is a glitch? Bodies that cannot or refuse to perform binary gender are glitching, and that is the foundation of glitch feminism. She writes, this non-performance is a glitch. This glitch is a form of refusal, right? So if glitch feminism foundationally is about rejecting all of these ideas and presuppositions that are foisted onto our bodies that constrain us within binary gender. She goes on to write, within glitch feminism, glitch is celebrated as a vehicle of refusal, a strategy of non-performance. This glitch aims to make abstract again that which has been forced into an uncomfortable and ill-defined material, the body. In the book, Legacy looks at artists who trouble notion of what a body is and what it should do. So Legacy works in museums. So foundationally, what she is doing, the analytical tools that... what is going on? Let me move that out the way. The analytical tools that she is using, the texts that she's using to support her case are overwhelmingly artists. Okay. She's working through definitions and functions. This way is good because as you're trying to figure out your body, tensions arise. And what do we make of those tensions? She asks, who defines the material of the body? Who gives it value and why? And I think that this is so useful. And, these are questions that most people don't ask, We're all just trying to figure out what our bodies mean. Or if you do have questions about your body and the definitions, you're wrong. Right? Why do you have those questions? Right? Are you, do you have a mental illness? Yeah. So the process of trying to figure out what your body means is never ending and anxiety producing. The glitch is refusing to conform to the scripts mapped onto your body. Glitch is about breaking out of the binary. And for me, right, it's like, so I think this is useful as a cis woman because, and I say this all the time, right? It's the foundation of good feminist, bad woman. It is because I've always felt like, despite the fact that I've always presented, I like a lot of traditionally feminine presentation, I always felt constrained by the expectations of Black cis womanhood. And maybe we should even make that more narrow, Black upper middle class cis womanhood. I always questioned it, I knew I was never going to be able to live up to that. The Glitch legacy writes, acknowledges that gendered bodies are far from absolute, but rather an imaginary, manufactured, and commodified for capital, right? So again, binary gender is not natural. Binary gender is forced upon us in myriad quotidian ways every day. That is not to say that sex is not natural, right? We're not talking about chromosomes or reproductive sex organs. It is gender that is the construction, okay? As long as binary gender exists, we will never be able to be free in our bodies. I completely believe that. Okay, I wrote, I actually understand why people hold so tight to binary gender because it feels like all we have is our bodies. And for some of that is all that we have. We haven't been given any other way to organize the world. So when we're seeing, there's a fucking meltdown over gender every fucking day, then we get Caitlyn Jenner coming in here and, trans girls shit. And it's like, okay, girl. Because most people are not given the tools or the exposure to imagine something different, right? And even, I think that the ideas in this book are really compelling, but it's like, what is a world after gender? We don't know. I wrote, is there any other way? And is the body a problem to be solved? Legacy writes, the brutality of this precarious state is particularly evident via the constant expectation that we as bodies reassert a gender performance that fits within a binary in order to comply with the prescriptions of the everyday. Through the application of the glitch, we ghost on the gendered body and accelerate toward its end. Glitch feminism asks us to look at the deeply flawed society we are currently implicated by and participating in. A society that relentlessly demands we make choices based on a conceptual gender binary that limits us as individuals. Glitch feminism urges us to consider the in-between as a core component of survival, neither masculine nor feminine, neither male nor female, but a spectrum across which we may be empowered to choose and define ourselves for ourselves. I wrote, most of us are complying with the rules of gender because the costs of rebelling are too great. Yes, there are enormous costs to being fugitive. Absolutely. That is coercion. That's why people talking about the naturalness of gender makes no sense. Absolutely. There are parts of womanhood that I am naturally drawn to, but I'm not exactly sure where the naturalness ends and the coercion begins. I don't think you can ever be 100% sure. Evolutionary psychology hasn't figured that out, to be honest. Okay. Legacy talks a lot. She uses the word corporeality, which means being physically embodied. And that is a prison. The digital provides an escape. Let me go back and make sure I'm looking at the... Okay. I'm just going to look at the comments. Interesting, you speak about young people exploring sexuality. I read a good book on it in class by Judith Levine called Harmful to Minors: The Perils of Protecting Children from Sex. I'm a little behind in the stream, but your discussion about the internet and taking on personas and having very inappropriate conversations with older men unlocked so many personal memories. I feel like that's way more common. It's way more common than like we're really thinking through. Nobody wants to admit it. I'll admit it. We're all subconscious. I'll be the first to admit it. All right, let's move on. As glitch feminists, this is our politic. We refuse to be hewn to the hegemonic line of a binary body. This calculated failure prompts the violent sociocultural machine to hiccup, sigh, shudder, buffer. We want a new framework, and for this framework, we want new skin. The digital world provides a potential space where this can play out. Through the digital, we make new worlds and dare to modify our own. The glitches, therefore, are participatory action that challenges the status quo. It creates a homeland for those traversing the complex channels of gender's diaspora. The glitch equals the break, okay? Glitch feminism demands an occupation of the digital as a means of world building, an occupation of the digital as a means of world building. Very interesting, okay? I wrote, when you are able to enter a space where you are no longer attached to your physical body, you have the power, freedom to self-define. That's why the digital offers so much opportunity, right? Because the body is constraining. The glitch posits one is not born, but rather becomes a body. The internet still remains a vessel through which a becoming can realize itself. The glitch is a passage through which the body traverses toward liberation, a tear in the fabric of the digital. This book is for those who are en route to becoming their avatars, those who continue to play, experiment, and build via the internet as a means of strengthening the loop between online and AFK. I wrote, the internet is a tool. It is not something to be afraid of. There's lots of talk, some that I've participated in, about the pitfalls of digital lives. Totally, right? What is that book? The Social Network, and, you know, all of these conversations about how the internet is ruining society. And I do think it's fucking us up in some ways, right? But also, there's always another side. It's a playground, right? It is a crucial space for survival of people on the margins. That's the end of the introduction. And I think that's a good setup for where we're going to move forward. Let me go back and look at the comments. Okay. As a non-binary person, I'm truly living for this text right now. Good. Let's move on. Chapter 1, Glitch refuses. Legacy writes, patriarchy exercises its social dominance by taking up space as its birthright. When patriarchy comes into contact with whiteness, it leaves little room for anything else. Very true. I believe she's talking there about Walt Whitman. She writes, to glitch is to embrace malfunction, and to embrace malfunction is in and of itself an expression that starts with no. All right, so to provide some context, obviously, because I had to excerpt things, but she talks about the Walt Whitman poem. What the fuck is that Walt Whitman poem where he says, do I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself. I contain multitude. Let me look it up now because I don't remember. Walt Whitman. Do I contradict myself? Song of Myself, 51. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. That is where the phrase I contain multitudes comes from. Walt Whitman, right? And who gets to contain multitudes is the question, right? Often it's white men. Okay. So early in this chapter, these are my notes, right? It's about, she talks about an artist who says that they're going to explicitly refuse to get caught up in the identity conversation, right? The identity and representation conversation that we've been told is revolutionary, right? Like, you know, representation matters, representation matters, representation matters, right? Which, okay, I guess representation does matter, but I do appreciate that we're moving past that. But it's like we get so often stuck as people who experience any kind of marginalization in the what is your identity and who are you representing conversation, that we don't even get to like the who argue and what do you want to do and what's next, that conversation, right? It is inherently stunting to marginalized people. And it's also like ultimately who benefits from us being stuck in the cycle of representation matters, representation matters. I don't necessarily think it's marginalized folks. It's gatekeepers, you know, people who write checks. Anyways, that's another conversation. Okay. The idea that Legacy is putting forth that we all deserve to have access to multiplicity is really useful. I think multiple selves is really useful. She writes, to seize multiple selves is therefore an inherently feminist act. Multiplicity is liberty. Yes. Oh my gosh, I agree with this so freaking much. Like, multiplicity for me at this point in my like feminist theory making is the name of the game. I think so often we get stuck doing one thing, and we often get stuck doing that one thing because of assumptions about our bodies, right? Assumptions about our identities, which are based on like what our bodies do. Totally. Yes. I wrote, I completely understand why people want to take on multiple identities to explore and liberate their many selves, but it does make me vulnerable as a very visible person. Yeah, that's my thing. So I think it's really important that we have these digital spaces that are terrain for exploration. But as a person who is extremely visible, I will tell you the most vicious harassment I get is from people using avatars. The most vicious harassment I get is from people who have 50 followers on Twitter and have cartoon or anime avatars or stan avatars. So for me, I understand, but it does, there's some security things there, okay? She writes, as flat, shadowy figures standing at the margins, we are stripped of the right to feel, to transform, to express a range of self. Yes, we have a right to range. Totally. I am so there on the multiplicity point. I'm so there. I wrote, the nope Russell describes reminds me of abolition. This world won't do. In the physical world, we are constrained by our bodies and the definitions that are imposed on them. In the digital world, these constraints can hypothetically be removed. But because of algorithms and the people who are in control, the AFK marginalizations are reproduced. Yes, unfortunately, that is the digital reality most of us navigate. Okay. And Legacy writes, the outmoded myth, however, that equates the digital and the radical continues to prove counterfeit. Don't I know it? Just as physical institutions lack intelligence and awareness, so do institutions of the digital: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. These are the institutions redefining the future of visual culture. They are also, without question, deeply flawed. The paradox of using platforms that grossly co-opt, sensationalize, and capitalize on POC, female identifying, and queer bodies and our pain as a means of advancing urgent political or cultural dialogue about our struggle, in addition to our joys and our journeys, is one that remains impossible to ignore. Yes, and there's no solution to that as of yet. However, if we assume that Audre Lorde's 1984 declaration that the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house still holds true, then perhaps what these institutions, both online and off, require is not dismantling, but rather mutiny in the form of strategic occupation. That's interesting, right? That's interesting. So if dismantling is not possible, right, we understand that all of these structures that are built up on the internet are fucking problematic. If dismantling is not possible, what strategies are we creating to take them over and remake them into something that we can use? Interesting. So the next part is capitalism teaches us to sell ourselves, to market our identities, and reduce our stories and personhood to easily consumable, trackable, traceable parts. So often we are participating in the identity game to survive or feel valuable. That's actually should be in italics because that's me. But yeah, right? Like, so when we are talking about moving away from the constraints of the body and the definitions that are imposed on our body, yes, right? Like theoretically, like abstraction would give us free liberty, right? More freedom. But why are we continuing to participate in these definitions and reifying them and asserting them over and over again? Is because participating in that cycle of playing into the definitions is how most of us survive. Totally. All right. But also how we survive financially, right? Economically, but how we survive in relationship to each other, right? What happens if I say, I don't believe in these definitions? What's my community? Let's move on. Glitched bodies, those that do not align with the canon of white cisgender heteronormativity, pose a threat to social order. Rangeful and vast, they cannot be programmed. Okay. The internet being so large and having so many points of entry is why it's so hard to get the bias out. It creeps in from all directions, but it also makes innovation possible. Yes, Legacy writes, the internet is an immersive institutional edifice, one that reflects and surrounds. There is no fixed entry point. It is everywhere, all around us. Okay, let me go back. Wow, you can be whoever you want to be in any given space online, which I think contributes to why we see some of the worst recesses of humanity reproduce. Yeah. Okay. One of my dark-skinned mutuals is getting dogpiled right now for calling out colorism in our e-community. So to start this text while it's all happening is very, very relevant. Yeah. And it goes back to the IRL AFK thing. People think Twitter isn't real life. They can say it all the time. That's why harassment of Black non-men is so pervasive on that platform. Okay. Yep. If capitalism online or otherwise tells you that your performance of gender is not valuable or necessarily transgressive, are you stripped of your gender? Are you a glitch still? If capitalism, online or otherwise, tells you that your performance of gender is not valuable or necessarily transgressive, are you stripped of your gender or are you a glitch still? Oh, we can get to that. But I don't think capitalism, right? Like what capitalism does is try to say, oh, your performance of gender is failing. That's your fault, right? What do you need to do or buy or participate in to better perform your gender? I feel like capitalism is always trying to say, this is the norm. This is the ideal. You need to participate in this stuff to meet the norm. That does not answer that question, but that's immediately what comes to mind. All right. Let's move on. Okay, this is where I just started screenshotting. For many of us, these tools have done little than gamify racial bias. Very true, right? So often social media networks there's these apps, the who do you look like apps, the see yourself in history apps and all of these. And it's like, they're biased. Or even y'all remember when there was the big deal on Twitter where people would post photos with black faces and white faces, and Twitter would just automatically crop to the white face. Okay. They also highlight the structural inequality inherent to the creation of these tools themselves, with such algorithms created for and by whiteness, and so echo the exclusionary, violent art historical canon, right? This search for, these are just random things I highlighted. This search for our own reflection, recognizing oneself within digital material and the electric black mirror that carries it, is bound up inextricably with the search for self-recognition away from the screen as well. Okay. Othered bodies are rendered invisible because they cannot be read by a normative mainstream and therefore cannot be categorized. As such, they are erased or misclassified within and outside of algorithmic designation. That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, let's move on. Gosh, so much stuff to get through. Okay. It's possible to use the internet to create authentic representations of self. I'm not 100% sure, but also, what is authenticity? It's possible to use the internet to create alternative representations of self. Maybe I shouldn't have used the word authentic there. Okay. The idea of the gender binary as a central site of misrecognition, even for people who are cis, is very interesting to me. Yes, I am very compelled by that idea. Yeah. Because, we drive ourselves crazy trying to be recognized. Yeah. Okay. Herein lies a paradox, Legacy writes. Glitch moves, but glitch also blocks. It incites movement while simultaneously creating an obstacle. Glitch prompts and glitch prevents. With this, glitch becomes a catalyst, opening up new pathways, allowing us to seize on new directions. On the internet, we explore new publics, engage with new audiences, and above all, glitch in between new conceptions of bodies and selves. This glitch is something that extends beyond the most literal technological mechanics. It helps us to celebrate failure as a generative force, a new way to take on the world. Dude, it helps us to celebrate failure as a generative force. And that's so like, that's where the anti-capitalist logics come in, right? Right? Maybe succeeding is not good. Maybe succeeding at gender is not good. Maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe the most interesting and liberatory thing is to fail. Yeah, that's I'm with that. Yeah. Thus, Jurgensen advocates for the use of AFK. Oh, here she's defining it. In lieu of IRL, as AFK signifies a more continuous progression of the self, one that does not end when a user steps away from the computer, but rather moves forward out into society, away from the keyboard. Okay. With this, the digital becomes the catalyst to a variance of selfdom. With each of us invisible men, we remain responsible for manifesting our own reflections. And through today's internet, we can find ways to hold those mirrors up for one another. Thus, we are empowered via the liberatory task of seizing the digital imaginary as an opportunity, a site to build on, and the material to build with. Okay, yeah. Generating ruptures between the recognized and recognizable, and amplifying within such ruptures, extending them to become fantastic landscapes of possibility. Generating glitch manifests with such variance, generating ruptures within the recognized and the recognizable. Yes, okay. We delineate ourselves through our capacity for being recognizable. We become bodies by recognizing ourselves, and in looking outward by recognizing aspects of ourselves and others, right? But maybe, right, this is the thing, maybe being recognizable, again, this goes back to the beauty of failure. Maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe that's not a good thing, right? When gender is a binary, it's a battlefield. When you get rid of the binary, gender becomes a playground. Okay. We can also arrive at an understanding of glitch as a mode of non-performance, the failure to perform, an outright refusal, a nope in its own right, expertly executed by the machine. This performance failure reveals technology pushing back against the weighty onus of function. Right. And by technology, obviously, like our bodies are technology, our identities are technology, right? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Oh, this is so like wonky and like nerdy, but I'm into it. I'm into it. Glitch prompts and glitch prevents. Yeah. Thus, glitch is something that extends beyond the most literal technological mechanics. It helps us to celebrate failure as a generative force, a new way to take on the world. I already said that. The glitch traverses this loop, moving beyond the screen and permeating every corner of our lives. It shows us that experimenting online does not keep us from our AFK selves, nor does it prevent us from cultivating meaningful and complex collaborative communities beyond our screens. Yes, that's the thing, right? Like what happens online generates out, radiates out, right? It's not captured or, perfectly captured. It doesn't just remain online. Yeah. The digital skins we develop and don online help us understand who we are with greater nuance. Yes. Thus, we use glitch as a vehicle to rethink our physical selves. Oh, I am so freaking into this. I'm so into it. Yeah, I think that's so real, right? Like, don't we all have that experience of the way that you're able to explore things or say things or engage online, right, without certain kinds of burdens or expectations, allows you to be better and freer offline. Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I'm there. I'm there. Okay, let's move on. How do we have, so she gets into talking about the gender binary, and I ask, how do we have feminist discussions that do not rely on the binary, but that can help us talk about broader trends? So this is something I've really been caught up in, right? Because often, if you read Bell Hooks, she says that feminism is a movement to eradicate the oppression of women. But now we're moving into the post structuralist stuff where it's like, what is a woman? What is a body? What is a right? And so if we embrace that, which I think it's useful to move away from really strictly binary language, how do we talk about violence that affects people assigned female at birth? How do we talk about real world experiences that affect women who show up that affect people who show up in the world as women, right? Like, how can we do that and also be cognizant of the fact that this is all fake? Okay. She writes, as a historical project and as ongoing politics, cyberfeminism remains a philosophical partner to this discourse on glitch. It looked to online space as a means of world building, challenging the patriarchal normativity of an offline mainstream. This just goes to show, right? Oh, I have to do a little stretch. I've been sitting Indian style. Oh, ooh. Okay. What time is it? Okay. Oh, we're gonna have to break this up into parts, I guess, because I'm not gonna be sitting here for 6 hours. But anyways, all of this reifies this idea that, like, it's not just, people always say, like, the internet, social media isn't real. Yes, it is. What are y'all talking about? It's crazy to me that people still say social media isn't real after 2016. Social media isn't real after January 6th. Like, of course it's real. Of course it is. Okay. The way I was able to find my voice online was crucial to me starting to develop a similar voice offline. Online and offline are directly relevant to each other. Absolutely. Okay, moving on. This underscores the reality that woman as a gendered assignment that indicates, if nothing else, a right to humanity has not always been extended to people of color, right? So basically she's saying that, gender is about sex organs, reproductive organs, and all of that, but gender is inextricably linked to race. That's, this is where we get into the, is like, this is a difficult concept, I think, for some people to understand. This is where I really get caught up with the, the femininity people, right? Because, like, we're trying to underscore that our ideas about gender are fundamentally colonial. I rarely ever hear somebody say something about essential gender that's not tainted by, imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. Anyways, let's move on. While feminism is a challenge to power, not everyone has been on the same page about who that power is for and how it should be used as a means of progress, right? Who is truly recognized as being fully human? Not Black people, not Black women. Where glitch meets feminism is a discourse that problematizes the construct of the body. It is important to call out the historical construction of gender as it intersects with the historical construction of race. The body is a social and cultural tool. Because of this, the right to define what a body is, in addition to who can control these things called bodies, has never been meted out equally. Yeah, legacy. I wrote, Blackness is a technology that forces us to expand our notions of gender. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. That was chapter 1. We've only done intro in one chapter. Okay. I'm going to have to wrap this up at 1:30 and then we'll just have to split it up into parts. Okay. Chapter 2, glitch is cosmic. When Legacy says the body is cosmic, she means it's inconceivably vast. The body is an idea. Right? Bodies are ideas. That was a little hard for me to grasp, right? That's a concept that I've had some difficulty with, right? The body is an idea. Our bodies begin as neutral and sexed, then we map ideas onto them. Yeah, the body is just a collection of ideas. Tricky, tricky, tricky. Noun and verb alike, we use body to give form to abstraction, to identify as an amalgamated whole. Yeah. Oh, this is let's take some time here because I really have had to go back and forth on this a couple times, right? The idea that we exist in like time and space, and it's like it's difficult to reconcile that, like, yes, our bodies are like physical things, right? Tangible things, but they only have meaning because of this like constellation of like definitions and ideas and like inherently okay, it's okay. We'll come back to that. Obviously, I'm still struggling, but I get it, but it's like it's hard to wrap your mind around. All right. We all begin in abstraction, ungendered but biologically sexed bodies that, as we develop, take on a gendered form, either via performance or according to constructs of social projection. To dematerialize, to once more abstract the body and transcend its limitations, we need to make room for other realities, right? Oh, so interesting. Okay, for many people who came of age as individuals and sexual beings online, the internet is not an esoteric corner of culture where people come to escape reality and play make-believe. It is reality. Yep. The application of the online versus IRL dichotomy in the discussion of gender or sex play online is deeply flawed. Such limits are bound up within a construct of, quote, real life, one that violently forecloses worlds rather than expands them. IRL falters in its skewed assumption that constructions of online identities are latent, closeted, and fantasy-oriented rather than explicit, bristling with potential, and very capable of living on a rate away from the space of cyberspace. You know what? As a person who lives online, people still have a very difficult time with this. Yeah. Oh, yes. They have a very difficult time with, this is my real life. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Thus, glitch feminism gives weight to the selves we create through the material of the internet. Glitch feminism makes room for realizing other realities wherever one might find oneself. Glitch feminism makes room for realizing other realities wherever one might find oneself. Oh, I'm so reading this like for like the third time is really doing something for me. Okay. There is no, so just read it 3 or 4 times and you'll get it. There is no return to the concept of the real, as digital practice and the visual culture that has sprung from it has forever reshaped how we read, perceive, process all things that take place AFK. Yeah, it's all real. I wrote, fluidity is essential. Yes, we are seamlessly moving from online to offline to, online to offline or online to AFK. So of course it's porous. Of course it's porous. Yeah, of course those boundaries are permeable. But that fluidity is good, is what she's saying. Okay, move on. Takes place AFK. Okay. This digital diaspora, therefore, is an important component of glitch, as it means that bodies in this era of visual culture have no single destination, but rather take on a distributed nature, fluidly occupying many beings, many places all at once. Oh, goodness. Yes. Yeah. Bodies in this era of visual culture have no single destination, but rather take on a distributed nature, fluidly occupying many beings, many places all at once. Yeah. Sorry, I'm working through it too. I really like this. Okay. she's talking about Lisa Nakamura. Nakamura's notion of internet identity as largely touristic plays into a digital dualist fallacy. Investing in a cosmic becoming, glitch feminism views these acts of experimentation as pathways toward a blooming selfhood. Totally. Yes, right? It's not fantasy. It's not fake. Yeah. And honestly, even I recognize that even the people, because yesterday I got harassed about Billie Eilish, I recognize that even or maybe 2 days ago, even the Billie Eilish stands with the stan avatars, that's who they are. You are that. That's not fake. That's them. Right? Okay, anyways, let's move on. The glitch self is always on the move. This diasporic journey of online to offline is a mode of parthenogenesis, reproducing oneself without fertilization, splitting, merging, emerging. The glitch self is always on the move. This diasporic journey of online to offline is a mode of parthenogenesis, reproducing oneself without fertilization, splitting, merging, emerging. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Glitch throws shade, chapter 3. So trippy in a way. It's like, do you even know what your body looks like without the ideas? Yeah. It's like, do I know what my body looks like? Do I know who I am? Like, what does it even mean? What does it even mean? It's trippy for me to like, what does it even mean to be in relation to somebody else? Like, it's like so freaky. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, not only do I not know what my body means, but it's like, it's like how my boyfriend, who is the he? You know? It's so weird. It is weird. Okay, but interesting. Okay. Believe it or not, TikTok does this sort of existential questioning of presupposed norms very often. Yeah. I agree with A Black H. I'm still in the process of using my voice online, but using it offline. Okay. Okay. Using the term femmes, maybe. If it's about the demonization violence of the feminine, then the focus should be on bringing respect to femininity. Oh, yeah. Okay. So Saja, talking about how do we have conversations about feminism without reifying the gender binary? Yeah. Using the term femmes. Yeah, I think that works. Yeah. Okay. Last one. Something I always hated was the idea that my online self was worth less than AFK. Because AFK, I have less weight and presence to be heard by my marginalized status. Yeah. Yes. And I think that is why marginalized folks are doing the most interesting shit on the internet. That is why the best trends and the most interesting content comes from marginalized folks. And I'm not just talking Black folks, right? Different kinds of identities. Or I even remember that the TikTok trend with the Native American people where they were doing the dances, or the TikTok trend with the Indian people who were dressed up in saris. That shit is so fascinating because there's not enough space. There's just not space. Okay, we need to move on. Okay. All right. Oh, goodness. Okay. Chapter 3, Glitch throws shade. Okay, here she's talking about Juliana Huxtable. Huxtable's exercise in abstracting presence or abstracting myself as a mode of performativity between online and AFK intersects with glitch feminism's cosmic ambitions to abstract the body as a means of reaching beyond its conventional limitations. Yeah, so we're breaking it down, right, into little incomprehensible, indecipherable pieces in order to transgress boundaries. Yeah. It's still tripping me up, but I get it. Okay. For Huxtable, as with many others using online spaces as a site to represent and reperform her gender identities. Okay, Juliana Huxtable, I can't remember. She was assigned male, or is it she, or is it they? What are Juliana Huxtable's pronouns? Let me look at this. Sorry, I can't remember. Juliana Huxtable. Pronouns. Was born intersex and began her transition. Oh, she. Okay, she, her. So she was born intersex, and it was assigned male at birth, and then was like, oh, that's not who I'm gonna be. And now she lives as a woman. Anyways, okay, let's move on. But being in that liminal space, right, has allowed her to explore gender and representation in a way that most of us just don't have the opportunity to, right? Okay. For Huxtable, as with many others using online spaces as a site to represent and reperform their gender identities, the internet represents a tool for global feminist organizing and an opportunity to be protagonist in one's own revolution. It is also a safe space, a way to not just survive, but also resist repressive sex gender regimes and the antagonistic normativity of the mainstream. Let's move on. In a dystopic global landscape that makes space for none of us, offers no sanctuary, the sheer act of living, surviving in the face of a gendered and racialized hegemony becomes uniquely political. We choose to stay alive against all odds because our lives matter. We choose to support one another in living, as the act of staying alive is a form of world building. Yes, right? They want you dead. Yes, because your survival negates the social order. Yeah. Okay, that's me riffing. These worlds are ours to create, claim, pioneer. Glitching is a gerund, an action ongoing. It is activism that unfolds with a boundless extravagance. Therefore, the political action of glitch feminism is the call to collectivize in network, amplifying our explorations of gender as a means of deconstructing it, restructuring the possibilities for action. Amplifying our explorations of gender as a means of deconstructing it. Yes. Restructuring the possibilities for action. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. This is how I talk when I'm reading, right? Yes. This is like, call and response. I'm a Negro. This is a striking reminder that the production of gender is at best an assemblage. It is surreal in the sense of a dream and full of other bodies, pieces, organs, parts, tissues, kneecaps, rings, tubes, levers, and bellows. Yeah, an assemblage. Yes. Oh, I so get that, right? By her very presence, Huxtable throws shade. She embodies the problematics of binary and the liberatory potential of scrambling gender, embracing one's possible range. Okay. Yeah. We're all just trying to piece together our genders. Absolutely. In drag, I wrote, is really about the absurdity of gender. Totally. Through refusal, we aim to deconstruct and dematerialize the idea of the body as we move through time and space, as wild forms building toward even wilder futures. Yeah. Yeah, there's some good fucking stuff in there. The idea that gender is just an assemblage, right? I'm trying to piece together my womanhood via what should my hair look like? How should I perform? I'm going to take this from there. I'm going to take that from there. I'm going to wear this dress. I'm going to, yeah. This tone of voice, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, so, ooh. Okay. Glitch ghosts. As glitch feminists, we want to ghost the binary body. Gender is a scaled economy. It is a mode of regulation, management, and control. It allows for the reification of process, the division of labor, and the exchange of value under the umbrella of capitalism. In order to ghost on the binary body, to abandon it as a failed idea, we must step back and look at the world as a body, an assemblage that has been constructed. The body, like the world, is a tool in and of itself. Oh, goodness. I want to spend some time with that. In order to ghost on the binary body, to abandon it as a failed idea, we must step back and look at the world as a body. Oh, okay. Okay, let's move on. Okay. The relationship between the idea of the body and gender as a construct is a damaging one. Second, it requires us to identify that we have agency either to consent or refuse our current relationship status. Okay, that means our relationship to our bodies. Okay, the relationship between gender and our bodies, right? As we fail to assimilate into a binary culture, we do so by asserting all components of ourselves, the masculine, the feminine, and everything in between, as being part of a continuous narrative rather than existing as polar points. Yeah, I know I keep bringing this back to myself, but that's how I make sense of things. I think that's how most of us make sense of things. And in my little skirmishes, right, with the femininity people, they're always like, you're masculine. And I'm always trying to and I really failed at this, right, the last time I engaged them. But yes, I am masculine and I am feminine. Right? Those things are not in opposition to each other. They work together all the time. Right? But the shame is attached to women aren't this. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Every 48 hours online, we as a global community generate as much information as was generated in written history from the beginning of civilization until 2003. Sorry, that's just a random interesting tidbit for me. Oh, I literally wrote this out. This is reminding me of the row I got into with the femininity gals. I am feminine and masculine. I am both things. It is fine to be both or neither. I might be one thing today and the other thing tomorrow, because that's what, Legacy is talking about with regard to fluidity, multiplicity, range, right? That's fine. We get boxed into corners to defend ourselves, to prove that we're worth being recognized. Yes. Yeah. Because earlier, was it chapter 2 where we were talking about being recognized and being recognizable? We're trying to perform within a binary so that we can be recognized. But we're, right, the way that gender is constructed and racialized, you're not really going to be recognized anyway. But the desire, because we understand that there are consequences to being unrecognized, the pursuit of that recognition forces you to consistently defend your position within the binary. Yeah. The liberatory potential of the internet is inhibited. This is me writing. The liberatory potential of the internet is inhibited by capitalistic interests. Gender binary and other demographic info is used to sell ads. While we're trying to use the internet to make meaning of our bodies, but we've lost control of all the bits and pieces of ourselves because of surveillance. All of the factual fragments are reinforcing binary gender. Yeah. Right? So that's the constant push and pull of, we are trying to use this digital terrain, this internet, to be fugitives, okay? To push boundaries, to create new worlds. But we're using these technologies that are collecting data about us And that data consistently is used to reinforce binary gender. Am I making sense? She's making sense to me, but it might not be making sense to you. And honestly, it didn't make sense to me when I first read the book. But just hold on. Just hold on. Okay, this presents a darkly modern paradox. As bodies disappear within the everyday interactions of the internet, that which we might have assumed as inherently private, our physical bodies, remain at risk of becoming increasingly public. The abstracted fragments of our online selves making moves independent of those chosen of our own volition. Yes, right? As you are moving through the internet, as you are clicking links and collecting cookies and all that, you're making yourself increasingly visible. Yes. Yeah. That's why privacy is for the rich. Real privacy, being able to scrub yourself from the internet, that's for rich people. Most of us are not going to be able to afford to do that. Okay. How can ghosting on the binary body help us keep safe our factual fragments as we fight to maintain our abstract bodies, our cosmic selves? When we reject the binary, we reject the economy that goes along with it. When we reject the binary, we challenge how we are valued in a capitalist society that yokes our gender to the labor we enact. When we reject the binary, we claim uselessness as a strategic tool. Useless, we disappear, ghosting on the binary body. The idea of uselessness as a tool. You can't utilize me. I'm not giving you what you need. Yeah. I'm failing. Yeah. Okay. I wrote, I learned the effectiveness of performing uselessness early. Being seen as competent or useful leads to exploitation. Why did I write, don't count on me for shit? I am selfish. That's funny, but that's real. That's real. Okay. Okay, recognition. All right, let's move on. What time is it? 1:09. We're stopping this at 1:30 because I have to do another live about Billie Eilish. Look, I'm in content making mode, okay? Kimberly is in fucking content production mode. All right, let's move on. I'm like losing it right now. Glitch, chapter 5, Glitch is error. The big idea of this chapter is there is power in being undefinable. To become an error is to surrender to becoming unknown, unrecognizable, unnamed. The body is a text. Every time we define ourselves, we choose definitions, names that reduce the ways our bodies can be read. Right. Ew. Okay, this is bittersweet. A gorgeous proposition that often ends tragically. The things that make our lives easier when our favorite digital platform appears to know us better than we know ourselves, suggesting an app in an ad that promises to save us money, make us friends, bring back lost time, are the same things that perpetuate a gendered binary. The machine readily anticipates the cultural detritus and vernacular that stems from the weight of a pronoun and feeds us the perfect dress or shoe, even when we don't want it. Right? So when we're talking about gender as a capitalist tool, that is it. Absolutely. Right? Yeah. Okay, keep moving. Decolonizing the binary body requires us to remain in perpetual motion. Accidental bodies that, in their error, refuse definition and as such defy language, forcing the failure of words, we become impossible. Impossible, we cannot be named. Perpetual motion. Yeah. When we name bodies in an effort to make them useful, we end worlds. A process of codifying and delineating territory, limiting the capacity of the world around us and our agency within it. Yeah. I'm having a good time. Conversely, Cardenas' stitch is conceived of as an operation that involves using one entity to connect two formerly separate entities, which she suggests is perhaps less violent than the cut, as it intends to join in the service of healing and creation rather than in the service of destruction. Okay. Thus, if the act of gender defining, as dictated by the binary, cuts deeply, it is our self-definition that manifests the stitch, begins the process of healing. Thus, if the act of gender defining, as dictated by the binary, cuts deeply, it is our self-definition that manifests the stitch, that begins the process of healing. Yeah. Together, we walk through the injury of naming into a celebratory occupation of the body that refuses fixity. Unnamed, useless, failing fantastically, we remain porous bodies in our pathway toward liberation. Endlessly, we reboot, survive, scroll. So much of this, like there are certain words that come up over and over again, like fugitivity, fixity, fluidity, motion, right? It's like refusing to remain stagnant. Yeah, that's interesting. Move on. Let me look to see if there's any. Okay, no more. Oh, sorry. I didn't know that was still up. Chapter 6, Glitch Encrypts. Gender is, to call on a term coined by philosopher Timothy Morton, a hyper-object. It is all-encompassing. It outscales us. As such, it becomes difficult to see the edges of gender when submerged within its logic, thereby bolstering the fantasy of its performance through its apparent omnipresence. In short, gender is so big, it becomes invisible. Yeah, right? It's all around us. It's constantly operating. Yeah. The normative ordinary is a violence, suggesting a natural order in lieu of a most unnatural system of control. As a hyper-object, gender becomes a geopolitical territory. It is a foundational framework built and lived on. Unable to see its edges, we are forced to live within it as a world in and of itself. This is why, in order to reimagine the body, one must reimagine space. Revolutionary change manifests through a reconsideration of the spatial, in negotiation of spatial limitations and identification of how to overturn, dissolve, break through these boundaries. Therefore, deterritorialization of the body requires a departure from the heaviness of space, with the realization instead the physical form is dynamic. Now this I'm still fucked up over. I'm still working through it, Legacy. Still wrapping my mind around it. I kind of get it. I kind of don't. But I highlighted that because I know that that's an important, but it's like, how do we reimagine space? The heaviness of space. I don't know, girl. I don't know. All right, let's move on. I'm interested in thinking about how Perry notes, okay, reflecting on this piece, Perry notes, I'm interested in thinking about how Blackness shifts, morphs, and embodies technology to combat oppression and surveillance throughout the diaspora. Blackness is agile. This shifting, morphing, and embodying of technology as a means of pushing back against an exploitative hypervisibility is essential. Shifting, morphing, embodying. Yeah. Right? Because you're trying to outsmart. You're trying to outsmart the hyper object, right? You're trying to outsmart society. So you have to keep it moving, right? Evolve. Yeah. Change. Yeah. Shapeshift. Yeah. Okay. Responsive to world conditions, we remain intentionally erratic, always morphing, and thus always unmapped, right? Because the violence is in the mapping. The violence is in people being able to pin you down and saying you are this. So that is why the morphing and the shifting is necessary. I understand. We consent not to be a single being frozen in binary code, and as such, consent as well not to be a single site. Yeah, that goes back to the vastness, right? Glitch is vast. Okay. Only as refusal will our data only as refusal will our data continue to perform, transform, transmute, transmogrify, travel. Whew. Chapter 7. Glitch is antibody. I wrote, legacy is not talking about the body as a physical thing. It's the body as an idea. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I must have been reminding myself. The meaning we project onto bodies, including gender, is not natural and inevitable. I keep repeating the same things in the notes because I'm trying to like get my bearings in the book. That is how I work through ideas, right? Yeah, that's so funny. It's interesting to see my thought process written out here. Glitch is antibody. Resisting the body as a coercive social and cultural architecture, we use body to give form to something that has no form, that is abstract, cosmic. A lot of work is put into trying to give the body form. Yeah, a lot of work. Totally. Oh my goodness. Leeson writes, antibodies escape extinction through their ability to morph and survive, exist in perpetual motion, navigating parallel conditions of time and memory. Yeah. Glitch's gesture toward the artifice of social and cultural systems, revealing the fissures in a reality we assume to be seamless. The binary body confuses and disorients, pitting our interests against one another across modalities of otherness. Okay. Chapter 8. Oh, I must be getting tired because the notes are getting shorter and shorter. Chapter 8. Glitch is skin, not skin. Skin. Gender cannot be left untroubled as just a construct, but rather that one of the biggest troubles of gender is that it is a racial construct. Yes. In chapter 8, we learn that gender is prosthetic. So that's that's what's meant by skin, right? Like, back in the day, you would put like a skin on your phone. You can put a skin on a car, right? It's like an outer wrapping. Yeah. The outer layer. Yeah. Okay. Gender is prosthetic. That's not how you spell prosthetic. Yes. Her work offers relief from the undue burden of striving for perfection that is built to undermine and erase glitched bodies. I cannot remember, what's the name of the artist that she's talking about here? I cannot remember. Okay. While online spaces remain super imperfect, often holding a somber mirror up to the world around us, online communities can create space to talk back to toxic binary tropes of masculinity, femininity. Embracing the plausibility of range, that is, fantasizing, playing, experimenting by donning different skins, becomes an act of empowerment, self-discovery, and even self-care. Yeah. Playing. The value of play here is really important. Experimentation. I'm going to use this when I talk about Billie Eilish later on. That's the thing about reading. You can make all of these connections. Okay. This reminds me of the IG post I made about gender performance. What IG post am I talking about? What IG post did I make about gender performance? I don't even know. Okay, let's move on. We can't forget the violence that's enacted on people who cannot perform. So we have to make spaces and acknowledge that gender is prosthetic, right? You put it on. You can put it on and take it off. Yeah, you hop in and hop out. Yeah, that's important. All right. Chapter 9. Glitch is Glitch is virus. I'm not sure why I wrote this, but the first thing I have written here is binary gender inflicts so much trauma. It does, though. That's not a lie. Even if you're cis, binary gender inflicts so much trauma. Your desires change and your understanding of who you are and who you want to be change when you commit to the break. Yeah. Yeah. Perhaps we want the break, Legacy writes. We want to fail. We strive for oozing, challenging bodies full of seams. We want wild, amorous, monstrous bodies. Through our presence as a glitch, we want to stand before, within, and outside of brokenness. Yeah. The break, an error. The error, a passageway. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what I want to read? Jack Haberstam's The Queer Art of Failure. That needs to be my next book. Okay, let's keep going. What time is it? 1:22. We have 8 more minutes of this. Glitch Feminism asks, can a break be a form of building something new? Can our breaking shit be a correction too? Has to be. It has to be. Yeah. Refusing to participate? Yeah, that's how you get new shit. The glitch is disinformation, virally transmitted as a means of undermining the architecture of gender, shaking it at its core, revealing its inherent fallacy. Gender is a carefully constructed economic performance as much as it is. Gender is a carefully constructed economic performance as much as it is a sociocultural one. Gender exists and is protected as a means of ensuring bodies, bestowing value on those who labor under its coercion successfully and compliantly, ascribing to its aggressive algorithm. Encrypted antibodies, body errors, systematically unreadable, push the machine of gender to its limits, right? Yeah. What happens if you cannot be read? If you cannot be used? Yeah. But there's suffering there, totally. Yeah. If you refuse to be coerced, you will definitely suffer, materially and otherwise. All right, let's move on. As we fail, we morph. As we morph, we transcend captivity, slippery to those forces that strive to restrict, restrain, and censor us. Yeah. Why did I write? The beauty stuff is really about compulsory performance of gender. Yeah. Yeah. Intimately connected to capitalism as well. Yeah. Binaries are still presented within the variety of options. Ooh. And moreover, recognition via these platforms urges us to believe that signifying who we are to others is the only pathway to being deemed fit to participate. Yeah. Binaries are still presented within the variety of options. So at this point, Legacy is talking about how Facebook has like 60 or 70 different genders, but that's not really transgressive. Okay, really what it is giving more information to the platform. Yeah. Recognition via these platforms urges us to believe that signifying who we are to others is the only pathway to being deemed fit to participate. And that goes back to the definitions thing, right? Yeah. It's an interesting idea that refusing to categorize bodies means you just don't reinforce the hierarchies. It's an interesting idea. Yeah. So I think so many of us find safety in the definitions. We seek solace in the definitions because we want to be, like I mentioned, recognized. You want to be in community. You want to have connection. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But you know, what she's saying is that is also constraining. Yeah. You know, something I think about is you participate in these definitions in order to be in community and find connection. But what happens if you have an idea or a thought or do something that runs afoul of the boundaries outlined by that by that definition? Then you have to consistently live in fear of losing connection, of losing community. It's constraining. Yeah. Yeah, legacy. Okay, let's move on. What time is it? Okay, 4 more minutes of this. Glitch mobilizes. Gender fundamentally is about division of labor. We've talked about that. It's about capitalist economies. Who does what and when? Okay, the internet is a playground of possibility. Okay, Galloway's generic difference theory proposes a path to a body that is inherently fluid, a body emancipated from ever being asked to register its traces online. As such, this kind of body renders itself useless as a subject of capital's regime of mining and profiting from data. Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting to think of our bodies as like a means of production. Moving on. The anxious question remains, is the sacrifice of true autonomy, the distribution of these bodily traces, worth it if it means we can't be part of something greater than ourselves, especially if that is something that helps us shape ourselves and by this shaping reshapes the world? Okay. To reify the binary of, on the one hand, the internet as a dead utopia, and on the other hand, real life as being devoid of actual and or social death for QTPOCIA plus bodies is a violent propaganda. That's true. The glitch mobilizes. This is our task, to keep mobilizing, modifying, shape-shifting with pride. This slip and slide is transcendent. We are everything and nothing, everywhere and nowhere, always in motion. If we see culture, society, and by extension, gender as material to remix, we can acknowledge these things as original recordings. Oh, this might be from the next. Oh, what the heck? Did I get it? Because I'm not sure if that's the right. I feel like that's from the next chapter, not this chapter. Let's go back. Yeah, I think that this is from the next chapter. Yeah. Okay, anyways. This chapter presents a good challenge to the idea that assigning yourselves all these labels is freeing. Labels can help you find your people. They also help companies find and categorize and sell to you. Are we more than the sum of our consumable identities? Oh, Kimberly, you did something with that question. Are we more than the sum of our consumable identities? Yeah, that's a good, yeah. Are we? If we are even going to have a chance of deconstructing this stuff, we have to mobilize. We have to distribute knowledge. We have to distribute resources. We have to mobilize to remain fugitive and resist hegemony. I believe that. Chapter 11, Glitch's remix. So I think that this quote is actually from chapter 11. So let's move it. I'm pretty sure. If we see culture, society, and by extension, gender as material to remix, we can acknowledge these things as original recordings that were not created to liberate us. Still, they are materials. Whoa, that just moved and I didn't do it. Still, they are materials that can be reclaimed, rearranged, repurposed, and rebirthed toward an emancipatory enterprise, creating new records through radical action. Remixing is an act of self-determination. It is a technology of survival. Right. Right. Use what you got to get what you want. Totally. We create opportunity for fugitivity in our deployment of digital material. Yeah. I wrote remixing feels distinctly Black. Yeah. There's certain kinds of modes of being that do come out of Blackness. It's a specific kind of technology. Yeah. I was watching one talk given by Legacy, and she said the internet is not a fantasy space. It is a future space. As glitch feminists, we aim to alter computer memory through our exploration of new modes of existing, surviving, and living, both AFK and on the internet. If a body is not legible as a body and can therefore cannot be real, will it ever be seen? Can it ghost, skirting the omnipresent digital eye? Failing recognition, can it successfully cease to exist? In the face of surveillance capitalism, the perhaps improved anonymity of data, advanced modes of encryption, or advocacy for better data control or ownership by individuals themselves is actually not the right battle to be fighting. To revolutionize technologies toward an application that truly celebrates glitched bodies, perhaps the only course of action is to remix from within, specifically programming with the unseen or illegible in mind as a form of activism. Oh, what she's saying is like we keep trying to force ourselves to be recognized, like people who exist outside of like these easily recognizable or identifiable or embraced categories always fight to be seen and recognized and included, but it's never really going to be what you want it to be. You have to start from making things where from the beginning your existence is valued and valuable. Yeah. Like, who is centered in the creation of things? Who is centered in the creation of worlds and applications? And that makes the difference, you know? Yeah. In Okoye's words, one must innovate, encode, engineer the error into the machine as a remix, rendering the machine unrecognizable to itself, prompting its failure as a radical act. The idea that failure is a radical act comes up multiple times. 12. Okay. In chapter 12, which is basically like a roundup, the big idea is limitless is possible. We are currently limited by the definitions. We're limited by the concreteness of the body, but limitless is possible. Okay. That's it. That's it. So here's what I'm gonna do. I made it through the text of the book. What I'll have to do is come back, and I know y'all not gonna read this book, so y'all can just read through the notes, and then we can come back and have a conversation, a little group conversation, a family discussion about the ideas that Legacy Russell has outlined here, but also your own reflections about gender and the gender binary and all of that. So that is what we will do. I will post a link to when that's going to happen. Let me go back and do this. That is it, you guys. I will we'll have that conversation this week, maybe Thursday or Friday. All right, that's it. Thank you guys. I will talk to you later.